All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the workshop titled Level Up, a new model for Indigenous-led trades and apprenticeship. This workshop is being led by Gordon Kakagamek, who is currently the Innovation and Training Coordinator at Oshki. Gordon has over 25 years of experience managing projects in innovation and training. He has a background in computer science from Lakehead University. After university, he set out towards bridging the education gap in First Nations by pushing forward the promise of broadband technology and e-learning for Indigenous learners. A dedicated professional and innovator, Gordon has worked with government, education, technology, and community and industry partners to achieve positive outcomes for Indigenous peoples through innovative and collaborative education and training solutions. Gordon's work is driven by his passion for creating meaningful opportunities for Indigenous young people to aspire and succeed in their home communities. Welcome, Gordon.
Thank you. As you said, my name is Gordon Kakagamek. I'm the Innovation and Training Coordinator at Oshki Pamachuan. We're an Indigenous institute located here in Thunder Bay. I've been there for about 17 years now, so working for our communities, our people is something I'm very passionate about. I've been doing it for the past 25 years. The title of my presentation this morning is Level Up, a new model for Indigenous-led trades and apprenticeship. What I want to do for the next hour is share the work we've been doing at Oshki Wenjack for about 10, 12 years now, training our people for the trades, especially our young people, the youth, the 20-something. Vivek, did you want to control the presentation? How do we pull up the presentation? I'd like to introduce Vivek Krishnan. Vivek is recently new to Oshki Wenjack. He's been with us just over a year. Vivek is our trades program coordinator. There we go. Awesome. Okay. Can you forward? All right, cool. Okay, next. So this is a land acknowledgement. Oshki Wenjack, management, staff, faculty, student, respectively acknowledges its campus is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe people of the Fort Wheelan First Nation, signatory to the Robinson-Superior Treaty of 1850. We also recognize the contributions made by the Métis people to our community. Next. So this is quite an ambitious presentation. I think there's over 60 slides. I'm more of a visual learner myself. I prefer doing my presentations visually as opposed to the young man downstairs. He did a more oral presentation. I'd like to talk about the Institute, give you an introduction to my presentation, provide a background to the work we've been doing, what the current context is out there in our territory, the Anishinaabe Nation. Want to talk about the Ontario apprenticeship system, pathways to trades and apprenticeship, our new mobile trades training model and approach, and some of the promising practices I'd like to share with you. And I'll also share a success story with you. Next. So a little bit about Oshkosh Wenjack, what we do, who we serve, where we are. So our mission is to achieve excellence as a leader in the innovative design and delivery of quality post-secondary education and training programs, which meet the holistic educational needs of Anishinaabe Nation and other learners in a safe, inclusive, supportive, and culturally enriched learning environment. Next, what we do, this is our mandate: develop, design, and deliver post-secondary education and training programs and services, student support services, to meet the education and cultural needs of the members and communities of NAN and other learners. Enhance, organize, and coordinate the delivery of post-secondary education and training programs and services which promote and support our culture, traditions, teachings, beliefs, languages, values, and lifestyles, and establish protocols and partnerships with other post-secondary education institutions in Ontario and across Canada, and our communities at the local, regional, and national and international arenas. Next, who we serve. We're mandated to serve the Anishinaabe Nation, 49 communities in our territory, both rural and remote communities, about 45,000 members living on and off reserve, and our people speak Ojibwe, Cree, and Ojibwe languages. Where we are, we're located here in Thunder Bay at the Centennial Square. Our programs are currently being delivered using iFlex learning model, and students either attend classes either on campus or online in their home communities. So just an introduction, what I want to talk about this morning: learning by listening, talking and doing. Learning by listening. So this is what the gentleman downstairs was mostly doing with this presentation. It's like a lecture style presentation. It's really about, we've been doing this for generations. It's our oral tradition where knowledge is passed on by word of mouth from one generation to the next. It's effective for teaching theory and transferring knowledge to practical learners. So that's what I'm doing now, learning by talking. Oh, this is the next one, learning by talking. Seminars and tutorials focuses on dialogue and discussion, interaction between students and between teacher and students, effective for critical thinking and problem solving. So learning by listening was I talk, you listen. Learning by talking is we both have a dialogue and discussion. Learning by doing is something what we're doing now. Learning by doing is observing like a master journey person, and the apprentice has to watch and learn and mirror what the journey person is doing. So that's watching and then doing. I've been calling it visual kinetic learning for for the past 10 years. It also involves experiential learning. I'll talk more about that. It's also place-based learning where context, location, and people are very important. I'll talk about that too, context, that's really important. And it's really effective for teaching a motor or a practical skill, something you use with your hands. So this is what this is all about, apprenticeship. So if you don't know what apprenticeship is, it's a sponsor employer that provides on-the-job training for an apprentice. It's a master tradesperson or journey person working with this apprentice. And most employers usually have one journey person to one apprentice. And the government sets up these ratios, journey person to apprenticeship ratios. The most common is probably 3 to 1. What that simply means is the employer must have one journey person to one apprentice. And then for 2 apprentices, they must have 4 journey persons. So it ramps up. The discussion nowadays is that 3 to 1 ratio, it doesn't work for our communities, and I'll explain that later. Next. So the skilled trades, there's 144 recognized trades in Ontario. If you go to the Skilled Trades Ontario website, and I tell our students this, they can actually read up on those 144 recognized trades in Ontario. Some of them are what they call compulsory trades and non-compulsory trades. Compulsory trade is simply it's regulated by the government, like mechanics. And there's also a red seal designation that applies to your credential across Canada, all the provinces across across the country. Next. I want to recognize this. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's the First Nations Trade School concept paper. It came out by Anishinaabe Nation, the hosts of this conference. And it came out in March 2015. And I guess the person that led this concept paper was the late Goyce Kakigamik. And I really take to this concept paper myself. It's a concept paper for the development of a First Nations trade school designed to meet the trade skills development needs of First Nation students living in the traditional territory of NAN First Nations. So what this concept paper talks about is really providing a trade school that works for our communities, our people, especially our youth, our young people. And some of the concepts in this paper, I took to heart myself, and I included it and integrated it into my work at Oshkosh Wenjack. So if you get a chance, I encourage you to read this concept paper, First Nations Trade School concept paper. And I did Google it, so it's available online. Next. And this is the reality of that concept paper. I don't know if you guys knew this, but in February 2017, Dennis Franklin Camardi High School launched their new First Nations Trade School. It was actually launched by, again, Goyce Kakigamik. So he was the leader behind the trade school at Dennis Franklin Camardi High School. So they've been running for about 6 years now, 5, 6 years. And that's the trend with our communities. A lot of more communities are, are building trade schools or trade shops in their schools. Okay, so I want to provide a background of our accomplishments, what we've been doing the past 10 years. And these are project-based projects that we have delivered in the past 10 years. And you know, before every project begins at Oshkosh Wenjack, all the program staff, including myself, Vivek, my 2 colleagues over here, we travel to our communities. And when we get to our communities, one of the first things we do is consult with our chiefs and elders in our communities. And the message we always hear back from our chiefs and elders is they want what's best for our young people, hope and prosperity. So we meet with chief and council to discuss their community priorities and projects, and we identify the skills gaps and training needs. That's how every project comes to fruition at Oshkosh Wenjack, is first engaging with our elders and our chiefs and councils. Next. So Learning to Mine, this was a project we delivered over 10 years ago. It's funded by Skills and Partnership Fund. It was a 3-year project. And we focused on attracting youth to careers in the mining industry. Some of the deliverables from that project is we launched the learningtomine.ca portal. So one of the first things we did was we knew one of the strengths of our youth was their internet skills, their computer skills, like the gentleman downstairs, social media skills. So we launched this new e-learning portal called learningtomine.ca. And the aim was to attract youth, you know, grade 7 and 8s into the mining industry. That portal was probably 10 years ago. It's still up, but some of the functionality has been lost due to evolving technology, but it is still there. We also developed and launched the Aboriginal Mining and Skilled Trades Entry Program, AMSTEP. This is one of our most successful programs at Oshkosh Wenjack. We've been delivering it since 2013. I'll talk about that in a bit. We also introduced Cambrian College's mobile trades training trailers. You know, that's the focus of my presentation, are these mobile trades training trailers. They've been around for maybe over 10 years. Cambrian College in Sudbury was the second school in Canada to get one of these trailers. The first school was actually Saskatchewan. We partnered with Webquay First Nation in the Ring of Fire and Cliffs Natural Resources at the time in the Ring of Fire to deliver this project, Learning to Mine. Next. So this is Cambrian College's trailer. What you're looking at is the AMP-STEP, the very first cohort back in 2013. And the trailer here, we tried to deliver it up to Webquay on the Winter Road. We even got, have you guys seen Ice Road Truckers, that TV show? Polar Industries based out of Winnipeg. We tried to get them to get this trailer to Webquay. They couldn't do it. If they can't do it, nobody can do it. So what we did was we brought the trailer to Eagles Earth. Have you guys heard of Eagles Earth? Just outside of Constance Lake. It was a tourist facility. They converted it into a training facility. So we brought the trailer to Eagles Earth. It's a land-based training facility. And and we brought all the students, 2 chaperones, 2 elders, Peter Rasovich, our program coordinator. Why did we choose Eagles Earth? Because Webquay Chief and Council told us they're not sending our youth to an urban center like Thunder Bay. That's what we were told. So we decided to do the training in a remote location out at Eagles Earth. Next. This is half the cohort training in Cliffs Natural Resources Esker Camp, doing their work placement. Next. So AMP-STEP, like I said, we've been delivering this since 2013, almost on a yearly basis. It's funded by various governments, Youth Skills Connections, INAC, FNY, FNYES, and the Pre-Apprenticeship Ministry of Labor. Our key partners have been Newmont on the mining industry side, Cambrian College, TDA side, and the Mining Industry Human Resources Council with their Mining Essentials program. We've had eight intakes since 2013, about 15, 20 participants per intake. And I'm not going to say all intakes were 80% success rate. The first 6 or 7, 80% student success rate. And I'm going to say the last 2, about 50%. Why? Because of the pandemic, we had to deliver the program 100% online, which just didn't work. Online training is something that didn't work for this particular program. So our graduates, that 80% student success rate, they're working in various occupational areas in the mining industry. For example, at Musselwhite, they work below surface and above surface. This is our cohort at the Musselwhite mine. Not sure which cohort was this, probably the 5th or 6th cohort. Next. So this is another cohort. The gentleman on the far right side, that's the mine general site manager. So we always had the support of senior management at the mine site. And that's Joyce Spence. She was the Indigenous engagement specialist with Newmont and the trainer there. This is inside Cambrian College's trailer. So the learning, after the learning, this is carpentry. This was introduction to trades. It's a 120-hour curriculum. What they're learning is the basic trade skills. So they apply those skills on various projects. What they're doing here is they're fabricating a winter sled for wood. And after they were done their projects, they brought these home to their home communities. So what they're doing is they're practicing their carpentry skills and their welding skills. Next. Airport Management Training Program. We delivered this for 2 years, 2019, 2021, funded by Skills and Partnership Fund. Our key partners were the Ontario Ministry of Transportation, Remote Airports Office here in Thunder Bay, and Wasera Airlines here in Thunder Bay. Over 2 years, we had 4 intakes, 60 participants, and the graduates are currently working at MTO-operated community airports up north. So MTO actually approached us for this project. It wasn't the communities, it was actually MTO. They needed local pools of workers to help operate and maintain the community airports up north. This is one of our 4 cohorts. What they're doing is they're touring the Thunder Bay Airport. So Thunder Bay Airport Authority was one of our partners for the program. Next. We also partnered with the Wate Power Transmission Project, the Power Line Construction Work Readiness Program. This was also 2 years. What we did was we went to the communities involved with the Wate Power Project, and we delivered community-based training, about 10 or 15 participants per intake. So we trained over 100 youth for this transmission line, which is currently under construction. This was up in Kingfisher Lake, I believe, or Winneman Lake. So like I said, we did all the training within the communities. Anishinaabe Forestry Operator Training and Apprenticeship Program. This was also a 2-year project, 2019-2020. For this project, we were approached by the late Chief Eacham in Kadugaming First Nation. She recognized that the mills, the Long Lac mill, was being operated and maintained by people outside the region, and she really wanted her community members to be the people that operated and maintained the sawmill there. So our key partners were Goki Development Corporation, Rocky Shore Development Corporation, Long Lac Lumber, and Nakina Lumber. What we delivered was level 1 industrial electrician and level 1 industrial millwright. We actually had 3 streams to the program. One was harvesting operations, sawmill operations, and forest management. This is up at the Agoki camp. So part of the training was a bush camp in the Agoki Forest, about 100 kilometers north of Nakina. So the cohort went out there. They learned about the introduction to forestry and also harvesting operations. This is inside the trailer in Long Lac. So we parked the trailer at the Long Lac sawmill. This is our trailer, and we parked the trailer at the Nakina sawmill. So the delivery of the training was delivered directly on site beside the sawmills. Pre-apprenticeship, industrial electrician. This was delivered, this was a 1-year project in partnership with Newmont and Northern College. This was for industrial electrician, level 1. So again, what the signatory communities to the Musselwhite Agreement wanted was their community members operating and maintaining the mill at the mine site. Not just the mill, but also operations below surface. This was 10 out of 10. We graduated 10 apprentices, and they're currently working either at Newmont, Musselwhite, or Equinox Gold. Next. This is inside the trailer. One of our students practicing his electrician activity. Next. All right, so what I want to do now, what you just heard about was the work we've been doing the past 10 years. I want to describe the current context, the current landscape in our territory. Next. So one of the challenges to delivering post-secondary education and training to our communities is geography of our territory. You can imagine how challenging it is. And I keep saying to government, Oshkosh Wenjack is probably the most challenged Indigenous institute across Canada in terms of delivering programs and services to students in our communities, just by the sheer geography and remoteness of our land. So there are 49 communities from the Manitoba border to the James Bay coast, all the way up to Fort Severn, and as far south as Chapleau area. So, most of our students, I'll be honest, come from the western side of Anishinaabe-Aski Nation. We do have some students on the eastern side of Anishinaabe-Aski Nation, but that's why we got the mobile trailers. We're trying to deliver trades training across the NAN territory. So having a mobile trailer that can move around to our communities is something that's very much needed. It's a gap, and we addressed it. Next. So these are some of the opportunities or some of the projects we're working on. Infrastructure developments, like I mentioned, the Wate power transmission line, telecommunications. They recently built a fiber optic network connecting our communities in the Silicon district. I know Matawa, they're building fiber to the home as we speak. A lot of housing projects, water projects, plumbing projects, road projects. So we're really focused on community infrastructure, providing qualified tradespeople for that. Resource developments, exploration and mining, forestry, natural resources, like oil and gas. There's no reason why our community members can't go out west to Alberta and work in the oil and gas industry. Our focus is on project infrastructure. It's underground and open pit mines, harvesting and sawmills, and out west, the pipelines. So what we're really focusing on is working with industry to operate and maintain their project infrastructure. The Ontario apprenticeship system. I've been working with our youth for the past over 10 years now. And one of the challenges for our youth is navigating the Ontario apprenticeship system. This was actually a diagram that the Ontario government presented at this consultation meeting about 4 years ago, before the pandemic. Just trying to explain to the delegates at the conference the Ontario apprenticeship system, and you try teaching this to our youth. It's just not going to work. So this system is very complex, has many parts and many interactions among those parts. We're actually developing a micro-credential at Oshkosh, Indigenous Pathway to Trades and Apprenticeships. So one of the goals of our micro-credential is navigating this system. This ain't the same system. They modernize the system. But that's one of our goals for our people, especially our youth, how to navigate the Ontario apprenticeship system. Pathways to trades and apprenticeship. Most of these pathways are for mainstream students living in urban centers. Some of these pathways just don't work for our people, especially our young people living in their home communities. Direct to work, you can go to school, maybe get your grade 8, 9, 10, or 11. For some reason, our youth drop out of high school and return to their home communities, but some of them do find education and training and go from their community to work. That's what we're doing now with the apprenticeship training program. High school to apprenticeship. This was just recently announced by Doug Ford. What he's trying to do is trying to get grade 11 students to go transition into a full-time apprenticeship and still earn their high school diploma. This was just announced earlier this month. The Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, that's offered at Ontario high schools. Again, that's all about cooperative education. That's that experiential learning. So what the Ministry of Education is trying to do is get high school students interested in the trades by doing this cooperative education. You can also go into college certificate and diploma programs. All the Ontario colleges offer trades and apprenticeship programs. There's also the pre-apprenticeship programs from the Ministry of Labor. That's what we're currently delivering, heavy-duty equipment technician with Newmont. Or you can go through unions and trade associations. Again, both of these pathways are for mainstream students. They don't really work for our students working or living in our communities. Next. So these are some of the barriers and challenges that I've observed working with our youth. Again, navigating the Ontario apprenticeship system. Some of our youth just aren't aware of the Ontario apprenticeship system, let alone how to navigate it. Grade 12 reading and math continues to be an education barrier. Going mobile. A lot of these projects exist outside the community or close in proximity to the community. So these youth have to be able to be mobile, be willing to travel. Access to experiential learning and trades training opportunities. Again, living in the community, you just don't get those opportunities. And I'll talk about that. Occupation-specific language barriers. Believe it or not, there exists language barriers out there. I don't know if you guys have known, but occupation-specific language training has been offered by Ontario colleges for newcomers. Because newcomers are trying to overcome the language barrier, trying to get a job in Ontario. And some of our people experience exactly the same barrier. For example, mining. The language of mining is so foreign to our people, that's an occupation-specific language barrier. And SLAM addressed this 10 years ago with their carpentry program. Mental health supports. Students that come out of their communities, they're displaced by their family and community supports, and they do have mental health crisis when they come to training outside of their community. I'll talk more about that. Employment services. Again, Employment Ontario agencies, they just don't deliver services in our communities. You go talk to Yes Employment, I'm sorry, we can't deliver any services to your communities. They only work in Thunder Bay and the Fort Valen First Nation. So that's a problem. Qualified tradespeople, journey persons, master tradespeople, living and working in our community. That's a challenge too. And stigma, especially among young parents. Like the young man downstairs mentioned, he was initially interested in the trades, and for some reason he dropped out of the trades. Sometimes that happens. It's a stigma that exists out there. Next, mobile trades training. So this is a classroom on wheels. Next. Just some background. I don't know if you guys have known the Post-Secondary Institute Strategic Investment Fund. It's a government of Canada funding program. They provided capital funding to post-secondary colleges and universities across the country. We applied for this mobile trades training trailer manufactured by Innovative Trailer Design down in Mississauga. So what we purchased was what we call an expandable trailer, which is this classroom trailer and a supply trailer. Both trailers can be configured, connected together to provide training space. We also bought our own Volvo truck and tools and equipment for 6 trades. This is down at the plant in Mississauga. So that's our trailer. That's the chassis. Next. They're erecting the actual structure, the walls, the ceiling. So this is the expandable trailer. You'll notice the walls expand to form a classroom or lab space. This was the completed project. This was our final inspection. It took about 10 months to build the trailer. I'll talk about the graphic design. Again, our expandable trailer. This is our tools and equipment. So what they did was they procured tools and equipment for 6 trades and organized them into these job boxes. Can we play this trailer? This is just a short video on the trailers. You'll see it deployed in Travis yard. So you'll notice it's in a T configuration. Has a skirt for wintertime, so that all the wind doesn't blow up into the classroom. Inside the classroom trailer, we have 6 equipped with arc welders. We are planning to get PDA status. This trailer does great. This is our supply trailer. It doubles as a storage container, not in use, our tools and equipment. And Trinus used to be our logistics provider. It's currently Stell Contracting. Our 2 role models. Talk about them. So you can tell by just looking at the trailer, you can see the indigenous identity that we put on the trailer. It's actually because of that, we have to put security on the trailer all the time when it's deployed, because we don't want people like they do on those, those trains. You see the graffiti at the bottom. We don't want that to happen. Next. Okay, this is our Indigenous identity. And I give credit to our previous leader, Rosie Mosquito, who wanted an Indigenous identity for our trailer. And she wanted a woodland artist. And we chose Joyce Kekigamek, his Metamorphosis painting. Why? Because it represents our youth. Metamorphosis is all about starting out as caterpillars, climbing your pathway, your career pathway, branching off into the branches, and metamorphosizing into the butterflies. So when you're in your cocoon, you're making these changes, and eventually you emerge from your cocoon, and you become butterflies or adults. So that's why we like the Metamorphosis painting, and we use elements of the painting on our trailer. Next, this is the launch of our trailer. This was the Chiefs Assembly back in 2018. Next. So we do focus on 6 trades. We procured over $500,000 in tools and equipment for industrial mechanic millwright, industrial electrician, heavy duty equipment technician, welder, general carpenter, and plumber. Why these 6 trades? Because we're focused on community infrastructure and project infrastructure. Operating these mobile trailers, there's a lot of moving parts to this training model. You obviously need a team at Ashki Wenjack, a director of trades, trades manager, trailer maintenance worker. And we do have an advisory committee for what we do for each project. Business development. We did develop a 5-year business plan. We shared that with FedNor. So we got 3-year funding from FedNor to help us with our mobile trailing. Operations and maintenance. So that's funded by both FedNor and the Skills and Partnership Fund. You do need funding for operations and maintenance. Programming, we work with TDAs, training delivery agents, Northern College, Confederation College, and project and partnerships. We work with industry and communities to develop these projects. Next. So here are some of our promising practices, level up to trades and apprenticeship. I don't know if you can see this diagram. This was a diagram I created. And what I wanted to do with this diagram is visually show our youth that pathway to trades and apprenticeship. So let me try and explain this. So the first column you see there, the yellow column, every one of our youth has an entry point, and that youth needs to assess their experience, their education. So some of these youth are going to be direct from high school. Some of these youth are going to be in their home communities, again, taking a pre-apprenticeship program, going direct to work. Some of these students could be mature adults looking at a second career, or some of these students can be post-secondary students currently taking a trades and apprenticeship program. So we each have an entry option. And usually how we determine where we want to go is through these both bridging options and education and training opportunities. So it's not always you go through high school, get your high school diploma, OSSD, or go through college and get your certificate or diploma, or university or degree. There's always other ways of achieving your academic goals, your career goals. So what we're focused on is the yellow highlighting you see there. So the pre-apprenticeship program and the academic and career entrance program. Those are the 2 programs we're currently delivering. And that's the pathway we're trying to create for our communities and our young people. So a pre-apprenticeship involves delivering level 1 in-school training in those 6 trades. So they have the option of choosing one of those 6 trades and taking level 1 training with our TDA, Northern College, Confederation College. If they don't have their grade 12 requirement for that trade, they can take the academic and career entrance program and get their grade 12 equivalent. Also try to teach our youth, our students, the achievement standard for that particular program. They need to understand those training standards, achievement standards. So I try to explain that to them too. Level 1 in school, you also get your work placement. Every program we've delivered in the past 10 years involves a work placement. Like I said, context is so important. After the completion of training, they get their level 1 apprenticeship certificate and transcript from our TDA. And if they're taking ACE, they get their credentials also through Northern College, our partner, and they get the high school equivalency certificate. So when they're done their training, at least in the Anishinaabe Nation, they have to choose a sector to work in. So it could be mining, forestry, energy, or they can focus, work inside their community or work inside a project. We call that infrastructure. And usually our workers, after they're done their work placement, they get interviewed for an apprenticeship. For example, at Newmont Musselwhite Mine, those 10 industrial electrician graduates, Newmont scooped up 5 of them. So they're placed with work crews at Newmont Musselwhite working below surface. So usually that's an entry level option. Eventually they make their way up the ladder at Musselwhite. So I try to explain to the students, it doesn't end there. You're leveling up to more high paying jobs. And lifelong learning can, level 1 is just the beginning. You still need to get your level 2, your level 3, your apprenticeship training hours, and eventually you need to write your trade exam. So this is the pathway I'm trying to show our students and our youth. Next. Level up. This is how we currently model our mobile training approach. So the application period, we work with the communities, we get the funding. Then we recruit the students. The majority of students for each intake, it's about 10. Only because of the limited space inside the trailer. So we work with the communities and we work with industry, we recruit the participants, and we deliver level 1 training, either inside the community or at the actual work site, for example, Musselwhite. So this level up, this is their first level up to their training. How we do it is either a local deployment on reserve, or we can do a regional deployment. So if we go into a community and deliver training, usually it's 8 weeks, only because everybody has their own housing. We don't have to worry about housing. But if it's a regional deployment, we usually take about 12 weeks because we got to find housing and other supports for the youth while they're doing the training off reserve. And then we deliver in-class training in those 6 trades that I talked about. It doesn't end there. You transition to on-the-job training. Like I said, the students will get apprenticeships in those sectors, and they do their level up to level 2, level 3. And eventually, the idea is for them to get their journey person credential so that they can train other apprentices. So that's how our training model works. Mobile training. Next. So some of the practices that we observed for the past 10, 12 years working with youth is during our recruitment phase, like we make an effort to go into the communities, not just for overnight either. That's what I tell industry. Don't parachute into our communities. No, we stay there for a week. And we do a 3-day recruitment workshop, just to build that trust with the youth. But one of the workshops I do is doing what is right. So this is about doing some soul searching, because if all the training they do, all the work placement they do, and during that period, they find out that this isn't for me, or I don't support this, you're just setting them up for failure. So asking the question, do you support resource extraction. So we're talking about minerals, mining. We're talking about forestry, fiber. Do you support that resource extraction? And I ask the youth that. I also try and measure their attitudes and perceptions, what they think about mining, what they think about forestry. And really, what I try and tell them to do is what I call holistic decision making. So finding that answer, doing what is right, involves mind, body, and soul. I support mining only if the mining company balances their project with the people and the land. Like with Newmont, used to be Gold Corp. They've been operating with those communities for 25 years because they do it in balance with the people and the land. But if you look at Attawapiskat and the Victor Diamond Mine, whatever happened there just didn't work. They opposed expansion and they closed it down. So again, that's what I mean, doing what is right. Next. Anybody know what this picture is of? Avatar. I presented at the Mining Engineers and Mining Operators Conference in Sault Ste. Marie 5 years ago. And when they saw this picture, they knew what it meant. They just a big loud moan across the audience. So what I did was I was interested in learning what my community, Sandy Lake, what the youth thought about the WBG Gold Project. And what I did was I went on the Sandy Lake community Facebook page and I was reading their comments and their feedback. The majority of those youth referred to Avatar. They opposed the mining project. Home tree, mining company is going to come and destroy their land, their home tree. So that's what the youth attitudes and perceptions was, at least in my community, Sandy Lake. So what I tell the youth nowadays is your attitudes and perceptions, you can't base it on on like movies from Hollywood. This is all make believe. You have to base your decision making on real facts, real information. So that's what I tell the students. Next. Provide much needed context. So these youth are living in their communities, and living in your community, you don't have that experiential opportunity, learning opportunity, like a mining project or a forestry project. So that's what I mean by context. You have to take them out of their communities and immerse them into these environments to what I call is an epiphany. The young man downstairs talked about an epiphany he had in Lakehead University. Well, you need to give our youth the exact same experience, that epiphany. This is who I want to be. This is what I want to do. So a lot of our youth, just by being at Musselwhite, that's where they get their epiphany. You saw the young man, he wanted to be a cook. You saw the young woman, she wanted to be a cord cutter. So that's what I mean. You need to place these youth in the right context in order to have that epiphany. And what I tell the youth was, I had my epiphany when I was only 10 years old. I was at the local arcade, Golden Castle Games, and I was playing these video games. That's where I had my epiphany. That's why I took computer science. What I wanted to do was a career in education and technology, and I'm doing it. Build coping skills and first aid skills. So when you bring these youth out of their community, yes, mental health crises do happen. Yes, panic attacks do happen. Lateral violence, oh, does it ever happen? Substance abuse, it does happen. So to address that problem, we partnered with the Health Commission of Canada and we delivered a mental health first aid adults who interact with youth. And it's just not the trainers, it's just not the staff that took the training, the youth actually took the training too. And yes, they do have triggers during the training. We had some young women who just broke down during the training, but it changed. Like after the training, you can see the change in them. So building their coping skills and first aid skills is something we also focus on when you're bringing these youth out to outside of their community. Next. This is the airport management training program. This was out at Quetico Lodge, just outside of Atikokan. So they just completed their mental health first aid training. Everybody got their certificates. Land-based learning. Remember when I told you Webequie Chief and Council didn't want to send their youth to Thunder Bay? Well, that's when we started focusing on land-based learning. Why? Because it mitigates risks and prevent unwanted access to, alcohol and drugs. It also supports traditional activities. So the two land-based learning training sites we've been working with is Quetico Lodge. It's about 30 kilometers east of Atikokan, and Eagles Earth, that's about 60 kilometers west of Hearst. So what we do is we park our trailer at these land-based learning facilities, and we do all the training at these sites. And these sites have to have housing. So Quetico Lodge, I noticed a lot of our organizations are doing training out there. They have 3 dorms. Each dorm has about 30 rooms. And Eagles Earth, they have these cabins that the students live in while they're doing their training. And if we can't do land-based learning, we'll do workplace-based learning. So we'll actually take our trailers to an actual work site like Musselwhite. Why? Because the students can acclimate to the work environment and workforce better. So what I tell the industry is our students are just stepping out of the classroom, like in a traditional college or university classroom. They're actually stepping out of our classroom, the trailer, and directly into the work environment. So being on site and doing all their training on site, the students transition better to work placement because they already know the work site and the people that work there. So doing their work placement is a lot better transitioning to. They adapt to the work schedules of the employee. So all our training at Musselwhite, every time we go up there, we do the training 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out, and 3 rotations. So they go in, they go out, they go in, they go out. And that's their training, their level 1 training. Why do we do that? Because Newmont doesn't want any of these young people, when they're done their training, find out that traveling isn't for them. So that's why we try and build those mobile skills. That's essential, building those mobile skills for the youth. And also you can train and work at the same time. We do have incumbent workers, people who are already working, who don't have their level 1. So they're training and working at the same time so that they don't lose their jobs. This is our trailers parked at Long Lac Sawmill. This was during the forestry operator training. And this was Cambrian's trailer. This was actually 2nd or 3rd intake. So their trailers were parked at Musselwhite mine. Mobile training works and improves graduation rates. I can't stress that enough. The mobile training does work. We've proved it in the past 10 years. It works because it improves access and flexibility for community members or young people. It improves health and safety. They're doing all their training inside the safety of our trailers, not in an actual production site. We don't interfere with operations when we park it directly at a work site. It also creates its own safety bubble. We've been piloting the trailer during the pandemic. What that really does is creates a safety bubble, and the students respect that safety bubble. They don't step out of it. Improved mobility and adaptability. So using the trailers, we're teaching our youth those mobile skills, adaptability skills for work placement. It's improved learning by doing, apprenticeships and teaching inside the trailer. So learning by doing apprenticeships is a lot better in the trailers. And it's an improved transition to work. So doing the training on site, then transitioning to work and apprenticeship is way better than them coming out to an urban center like I don't know, Confederation College. So Jody Wabus, she's from Long Lake 58 First Nation. She's one of our success stories. So these are her own words. Before taking the pre-apprenticeship program with Oshki, I was living on social assistance with my 2 children. Currently looking for work. I saw a post, not really sure what to expect. During the program, one of the hardest challenges I faced was leaving every 2 weeks for the program. So I was like the 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out. Also, the schoolwork in the beginning was hard to grasp, but our instructor, Mr. Shane Belanger, taught us in a way that helped us not only understand, but fall in love with the electrical trade. Now that I've completed the program and currently employed as an electrical apprentice, I feel I have purpose and goals. I'm going to be an electrician. I have a few organizations and people to thank for that. First of all, thank you, Oshki, for giving this amazing opportunity. KCATS for backing me up when the program ended and helping me to find opportunities to keep my career going. Muscle White Mine for housing us students and showing me I can really love my job. My reserve, Long Lake 58 First Nation, for supporting me throughout this entire experience and after. Also, Kachimigwich to my program, to I lost my, to my instructor, Sean Belanger, or him, without I wouldn't have found something I love so deeply. The young men who walked into the program with me, who are now my friends, bros, my family for supporting me throughout this journey as well. Having children and pursuing dreams is one of the hardest things I've ever done. It would not be possible without my parents, siblings, and aunts, uncles, grandparents, and cousins. Because of this experience, I've learned how to come out of my shell and go for what I want. And now I'm starting my apprenticeship with the mind of my choice. I have never guessed this is what I want, what my future would be, look like, but I am more than ready and excited for these next chapters of my life. So that's Jody Wabas. She was actually the only female in that cohort of 10 students, and the rest were males. That's Jody inside our trailer doing a training. Thank you. I hope you guys learned something about Mobile Trades Training Trailer. I hope some of you are vocational educators and you can consider maybe talking with your communities, your schools for taking the same approach for trades training and apprenticeship. Thank you. Thank you. Are we on time? What time is it? Huh? 11:30? Wow, right on time. Thank you.
The button that says push. Gotcha. Awesome. I had hoped to have the handheld microphone again because I really like to go around the room, and we're still going to do that because I'd really like to hear who you are, where you're coming from, and anything you'd like to share about your values for the early years, 0 to 6, your thoughts about early learning and childcare, anything that you would like to share about the early years. Today's presentation is going to be an overview of the Indigenous Early Learning and Childcare Framework and an update of all the work that is happening at NAN and the next steps that are going to take place. So I'm Christy Hunkula. I'm the Early Learning and Childcare Senior Policy Analyst at NAN. I am a registered early childhood educator. I've worked primarily for the school board, but also for some childcare centers, and have done a lot of curriculum writing and training with educators as well. My background is in corporate communications and journalism, and I spent a lot of years working for NAN in the communications department before I went back to school to be with children. So I'm very excited to be able to have a position that allows me to join those two things together and help improve the lives of children and their families. I'm going to ask you to yell out loud a little bit and just go around and just introduce ourselves. And we're going to start with my team member.
Hello everyone, my name is Morgan and I am a registered early childhood educator and resource consultant. I've worked within the field of childcare years ago, and then with NAN for about 6 months. So I'm new at this and I'm really passionate about this.
Thank you. Times?
Sure. Karen Dorose, I'm a teaching principal, 7 and 8. I work in from the area.
And you have any experience with the 0 to 6? Have you done any teaching or?
I taught kindergarten for 3 years.
Oh, so you have a lot of experience.
My name is Sylvie. I'm from Shapu. I'm working with the First Nation Reserve on Private West Nation. More than guys from the and majority of students.
Hi, my name is Jordan. I am from Pick River First Nation, Anishinaabe. I work for Anishinaabe Employment Training Services, and I'm a project coordinator for the pre-apprenticeship training program, and I'm just trying to soak in as much as I can in this event, and really glad being here, and I'm really grateful, and just trying to pick up some things that I can help myself to be a better educator for programs that
Wonderful. You actually have an amazing example within your own community of very high quality, culturally appropriate childcare program in Pick River, where it's really led and designed by the educators, by the community, instead of dictated through provincial regulations. So we're always excited. So thank you for being here. Hi.
My name is Jordan Nass, and I'm the Executive Director of NAN BP Family Development Center for the Country. We're a childcare center who cares for children 0 to 12. And we have 3 locations, and I've been working in this field for 11 years now. And I worked with infants primarily for the first 6 years before I come to Europe.
So again, tons of experience in the 0 to 6. Thank you for being here. Hi.
Luis Munoz from the Canada Extension Center. Great time. Sarah Johnson Fishing Coast, North Carolina Lake, also known as Red Mall. And they're just vice principal. I have taught kindergarten many years ago. Just last night, I was invited to we had a community and forum actually just last night about the child care custom law that they are working on. So that was a news for me from my community. So anyway, and we do have, we did have, Head Start in our community at one time. I'm not sure if it's still on. But anyway, I was just here for, let's see. Let's back come up. I've been looking for that on and off for a number of years in quite a few departments, but I just finished the honors bachelor of commerce with Lakehead this past April, and I've come back to the education department as an assistant. I've been working in the field of education as an assistant for quite a while. Teachers program. Wealth of experience in the early years in this room already. Jocelyn, I think it is. Would you mind introducing yourself? If there's anything that you'd like to share about experience with the early years or values for children in that age group or anything about this relative.
Hello, I'm Jocelyn. I'm a second year student at LU. I'm in the education, it's actually called the Aboriginal Learning Program. So, my hopes and goals are to share with the First Nations. So
Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today and for sharing a little bit about yourselves. I really do hope that if you have questions, that you'll ask them. And I'd love to have a conversation when I'm done talking to hear your thoughts on what best practices can look like for the early years. Click. I'm just trying to click through the presentation. It works if you turn it on. Thank you very much. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but we did go around and introduce ourselves. If you would like to tell us your name and where you're from, and if you have any experience or any thoughts on the early years, we'd love to hear from you. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Today it is a presentation, an update on the Indigenous Early Learning and Childcare Framework, which is a document from the government, and the work that NAN is doing to support this framework. So this picture to start with, love it. We recently visited the Ganoogaming Aboriginal Head Start on a site visit, and we did some cultural camps, even with the very, very, very little ones, and we just love these pictures. So they're just scattered throughout every single thing that we do. So it's wonderful being at conferences like this, because I do not need to stand here and tell you what the importance of the 0 to 6 is. You are a group that is already invested in children, that already understands that the years from 0 to 6 form the foundation for a child's entire life. The experiences that they have, the relationships that they make, the connections that they have with their environment and the people and the world around them will form those pathways within their brain and will set them up for a lifelong of success. Early learning and childcare programs that are high quality, culturally appropriate, accessible by all children can also help children to identify a very positive sense of self, of who they are, as well as the role that quality programming can play in reclamation of language and culture in a community. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the UNDRIP, the Royal Commission of Aboriginal Peoples have called on all levels of government to develop culturally appropriate early childhood programs for Indigenous families. So the framework was co-developed with Indigenous partners. It is one of the rare examples that we have seen of some true consolidation or consultation, with Indigenous communities. And a framework was put together to ensure a move towards self-determination for communities over the early years. So it's pretty confusing, the whole structure of the IELCC, but basically it was an increase of funding. It was kind of a collaboration of funding from all different sources that has kind of been pulled together and increased for communities. So it is led by Employment and Social Development Canada, so ESDC. They hold the IELCC Secretariat and the entire kind of file. And they also are the administrator of daycares who receive First Nation and Inuit childcare initiative funding, so finicky. All the childcare centers that are licensed in NAN communities receive the finicky funding. Then you have your Aboriginal Head Start centers on reserve. Those are funded through ISK and administered through ISK. All of the funding and all of the decisions go from ESDC and ISK to the AFN. From the AFN, it goes down to Chiefs of Ontario. Then Chiefs of Ontario use their funding formulas to distribute to the PTOs and then to the First Nations. It is, announced as a seamless process, but of course, as you can see, it really isn't. And we continue to do a lot of work to have that arrow from here down straight to the First Nations. So here are just some national budget highlights. 1.4 billion over 5 years with a 3% increase every year. So communities have told us that they have started to notice an increase with funding, and the funding can be held over and saved over years. So you start to see how communities can do forward planning and future planning with these dollars, instead of historically it was, this is your year budget, you spend that in the year, if you don't spend it, you lose it. So communities are able to carry it over and do more planning in the early years. Before and after school care was funded at, and these numbers are Canada-wide. So just to give you a little bit of context, Ontario's portion of that would be just under 20%. So it is not a lot of money when you think about it in that way. Before and after school care for First Nations has been flowed through existing education agreements. And then you have the repair and renovation funding to address the repairs needed in existing centers. And then you have 420 million. So that is supposed to be released April 1st, which would be like Saturday. They are still in consultation, and we'll talk a little bit more about that soon. But you can see how it's not a ton of money, and it will not be enough money for every community to build ELCC infrastructure without further advocacy efforts. There are other pools of money that are starting to come up that we are actively seeking. 200 million from ISK, from Community Infrastructure Fund, and then a 625 million, which we were so excited about because that is a significant amount of money, but we did learn that that money is going to be provincially led. So every province will get a share of that money, and then it will be up to Ontario to decide what First Nations get. So that is a very scary thing. In Ontario, Ontario is the only province that has not stepped up to the plate in terms of IELCC. Every other province has had the provincial government step up and make an additional contribution to Indigenous childcare. Ontario has not. So the only contributions have already been existing contributions for years. And they say their position has been that IELCC is a federal funding responsibility only. So to have a government that has said that and that is their position, and then there's going to be 625 million, it is scary. And just more context is that 614 million was just announced provincial funding, and the government of Ontario has decided that First Nations are not eligible for that funding unless they were to work together to build a daycare on urban land. So just a lot of red flags and a lot of work to do with advocacy within every single level of government. The final settlement funding for the CHRT ruling is looking like a wonderful source for ELCC funding if communities decide to use those prevention dollars in that way. So every community receives a standard amount of prevention dollars, which has had a huge increase since the ruling. And communities could use that for operation and maintenance costs, but there's also a huge pot of capital funding. So we are encouraging communities who are interested in new ELCC infrastructure to reach out, because there could be $150,000 to $200,000 that we could access to do a full-blown needs assessments in your community, to identify what services are lacking and what services are needed for children and their families. Another Ganuguming picture. It was just wonderful to see the children. We had partnered with Tristan, the executive director of the Timmins, Ojibwe and Cree Cultural Center, and he came and did these cultural camps with the children, and they were just, of all ages, were just so into it. And this little one there, he had his hand over his ear and drumming for a really, really long time. So the Indigenous Early Learning and Childcare Framework that was introduced by ESDC is formed around 9 principles. And I'd like to just take a few minutes to go over those principles and invite you to think if there is anything in these principles that you feel is lacking, because now we're in this position where NAN is developing our own framework based on consultation with communities. The first principle, Indigenous knowledges, languages, and cultures. So recognizing that the crucial importance that these programs are rooted in every community's unique cultures, language, and traditions. Number 2, self-determination, First Nation determination over the ELCC programs. It's one of the biggest ones. I think it should be number 1, but quality programs and services. So programs that are designed by Indigenous, led by Indigenous, creating culturally appropriate programs and services grounded in culture with a holistic approach for every child, supporting the wellness of children and families in safe and nurturing environments. Child and family centered. So understanding the child in the context of family and prioritizing the direct involvement of families. And this is an area, these are all areas that NAN is either focused right now or part of our huge 10-year, 20-year ELCC plan. But really prioritizing that family relationship as the child's first teacher. Inclusive environments. There are some programs in NAN communities, and I'm sure that I don't need to tell you, but there are often children in NAN communities that are excluded from school and daycare settings because of disability exceptionalities. And so our goal, of course, is to design communities, to design programs that are inclusive of every single person. And to me, this also means for this inclusivity is also really thinking about that transitional planning to ensure the children that are moving from a childcare center into the school system are supported holistically from the time they enter that childcare center until the time they leave high school. Flexible and adaptable, enabling supporting flexible programs, responsive to the unique needs of every child, accessible, so affordable, available for every single child who wants to partake or families who want care. Children smudging and ganuguming. Transparent and accountable, and built on respect, collaboration, and partnerships. And I think partnerships is such an important key here. When you look at the dismal funding picture, that this isn't going to happen without extensive partnerships. And we start to look within how we can build these different partnerships to support every community in building these systems and structures that work for them. Muskrat Dam, Muddy Buddy suits, just loving life. So when we look at infrastructure, only 13 NAN communities currently have early learning and childcare infrastructure, which means 36% do not. 75% of our communities are lacking early learning and childcare opportunities for children and families. There is so much work to be done. Um, there are two separate funding processes, and I started to explain this, and it is confusing, but I'm just going to get through it anyways, and you please ask questions if you have them. Childcare centers, their primary source of funding in NAN communities is finicky funding, and Aboriginal Head Start centers receive ASOR funding. There has been two separate processes for everything, dependent on your source of funding. So we were promised a seamless process parallel, and it has not been the case. So communities who receive finicky funding and have centers, they had a separate process for applying for repairs and renovations. And this is Ganoogaming's brand new building. So these are the childcare centers listed there on the right. So finicky centers were able to complete this questionnaire that asked them to assess repairs under 3 different categories: urgent, required to meet licensing standards, and then physical and educational accessibility needs. Communities were also asked if they would like to apply for needs assessment funding, and the questionnaires, they had a couple of months to submit them, and within 2 months, the funding announcements were made. Every NAN center was given every cent that they asked for repairs and renovations. So that was really wonderful news. And they, which especially great with winter roads, that they were able to get their materials on the way and get that work started. They were also awarded needs assessment money, but instead of the 50, they were given 25,000. ASOR sites have not had the same opportunity. Historically, Aboriginal Head Start, the infrastructure was given by the community as an in-kind contribution, and all of the funding is programming dollars only. So there's very little information that exists on the physical infrastructure of these buildings. They are not inspected in the same way as provincially licensed childcare centers are, and they are in such need of repair, renovation. Some of them have been in unsafe situations and having to close. And instead of having the opportunity to submit a questionnaire that would allow them to ask for repair and renovation, ASOR sites all received $10,000. And the longest survey that we've ever seen, it is definitely engineer level, architect level, 10, 15 pages, just going through every single component of the physical infrastructure. So way over, getting sent to childcare centers or Aboriginal Head Starts, over the heads. So $10,000 doesn't come near enough to complete this survey. So when we went and advocated, you have $50,000 that you're offering finicky sites and $10,000 for ASOR sites, and ASOR sites aren't getting any repairs. Unfortunately, what ended up happening is that 50,000 turned to 25. And the rationale given was to lessen the discrepancy in between communities. So again, so much work and advocacy work that needs to continue to happen. As I said, the new infrastructure funding, Canada has committed 420 million, so less than 20% of that will stay in Canada. Ganoogaming is okay with us sharing this number. It costs 8 million for Ganoogaming to build their new center. So when you look at that and the need across NAN communities and the funding that is available, it is very concerning, to say in the least. The funding was supposed to be released in April 1st. They supposedly went into consultation last year. The way that consultation looked is they developed a First Nation discussion guide for infrastructure funding. And in February, so just last month, they reached out to AFN and they said, here is what we want. Give us some input into the new infrastructure funding. And AFN said, no, you need to go to every single individual First Nation. First Nations need the opportunity to speak for themselves. That didn't happen. Nothing else has happened. So we don't know. We don't know what that new infrastructure funding is going to look like, what the regulations or stipulations might be around it. We're just waiting to find out, and it could be within any day or a couple of weeks that new infrastructure funding rolls out. Communities who would like to apply for that we will support in any way that we can. But unfortunately, at this point, because we haven't had the opportunity to build structures and systems that work for NAN communities, the only option for a licensed center is a center that's licensed through the province of Ontario. The regulations for that pose a lot of restrictions for NAN communities, is what we've heard. We have heard that NAN communities want childcare centers where their traditions can be practiced, where their foods can be eaten regardless of if it's wild game or not. That children could engage in activities such as skinning rabbits, properly supervised, right? NAN communities want a licensing framework that is built upon their cultures, traditions, and languages. And right now, the province of Ontario is not. So we are keeping a list, communities who are interested. We have a lot of things that are going on. So I do invite you to please reach out to us if you want any more information on how you can get ELCC infrastructure into your communities. These are a bunch of pictures from Ganoogaming, from their brand new building. We were just there I guess it's been a while now. It feels just like yesterday. Beautiful, beautiful new center. And even though it is beautiful and the children and the educators are happy there are so many things that they wish that they would have done differently. And they have been amazing at being there for other communities to learn from. So we have done interviews with the coordinator and members of the community, and we've printed them as well, and they'll be available soon in reports so that other communities can learn. So for example, the heating and cooling system is one of the biggest things. The system was designed with 4 separate heating and cooling systems within, and there is nobody within a 500-kilometer radius that can fix it. It's constantly breaking. They're constantly having temperature differing by 15 to 20 degrees, depending on where you are in the building. So one of their biggest pieces of advice to communities is to develop and design systems that can be serviced within your community. And the other big thing that they said is they didn't think about storage. And in childcare and in early years, that opportunity to store loose parts, to store things that you might use in the future, is necessary. And what they're doing right now is using an entire classroom for the storage. So lots of ways that we can learn. And as we go along, we'll continue to learn and support communities in the best way that we can. I've already kind of touched on this as well in the Canada-Ontario agreement. This is one of our big focuses. I really see this as a huge key piece of the puzzle that needs to be fixed so it will fit in. What we are doing right now is getting Ontario to give us their official position, and then that will give us the grounds to pursue legal action. It is discrimination that they will say you can't build a childcare center in your First Nation with this funding. You can only build it in an urban center. So these things are actually illegal, and they are but again, that could be 10 years, right? And if it had to go that way. Just to give you an idea, definitely a huge area of advocacy that we are working on. Bill C-35, and I'm wondering if that's the legislation that you might have been talking about, but Bill C-35 makes childcare into law. And it ensures that early learning and childcare can never be erased from a budget, that it is consistently a piece of legislation and priority moving forward. But the problem with Bill C-35, again, is that there was no consultation done. The same exact process was taken. They reached out only to AFN. AFN said, no, we will not give you a position. You need to do this. And then that's where it ended. Then, they reached out to every single province, and they called it a meet and greet with the government. And what it was the government's version of consultation. So they did say that they have consulted. Again, they have not. So we did put in a brief because legislation is in committee now. And again, there's no huge problems with the legislation itself. It is in the lack of their duty to consult, as well as putting a national advisory council into the legislation that doesn't have representation of Indigenous people on it. So here's what we know. We know that there are 9 licensed childcare centers in NAN. We know that a few of them are closed because they need repairs, they need renovations, or because the pandemic hit so hard that they haven't been able to recover. We know that all centers report a very high staff burnout rate. The list of mental health is a primary concern, as well as addictions. Most centers have challenges accessing adequate resources. And by that, I mean like PT and speech therapy, but also resources for autism and language resources. Really, they said anything was difficult for them to obtain. Huge concern in the lack of funding, of course. And centers, they're begging, they want more language resources. They want funding for language teachers, funding to support participation in ceremony and traditional activities. And for some centers, that looks like we need funding for transportation. We need vans in every center. We need centers to have the opportunity to go into the community to participate in these events. And we need transportation to maybe bring elders to the center. But also some communities are saying that the families are struggling. The families are struggling so much that the children aren't coming to program. And if they had transportation, the children would come to the program. They would have that safe place. As we learned from, our keynote speaker on Tuesday said, it just takes one person, one connection with a child can change their entire life. And having access to these kinds of programs can do the same thing. Huge challenge in accessing opportunities for education and training for staff. Many centers only have one RECE, if they have any, and it's a provincial and national problem that there are not enough educators. So it is going to be even more difficult for us up in the north and more remote areas to access people. So a lot of work is going to be done and put into forming generative curriculums that can have people training at home with a curriculum that is based on their community's unique vision for children, values for children, languages, cultures, and traditions. Recruiting and retaining staff, again, huge concern. We've had some creative solutions across NAN communities, including one who drove herself door to door knocking, asking people to come and work. And she would give anybody, of course, with a criminal record check, of course, the opportunity to come and spend a day in the center to see if it was a right fit for them. And she actually did increase her staff by 5 people by doing that. We have tried to provide as many opportunities as we can to hear what NAN community members, educators, leaders, elders want from the early years, what your values for children are. And some of that work was done in June. And I don't have any reports left here, but I have business cards. So if you're interested in anything that I've said, please reach out to me. But we developed a workshop report that really looks at the communities coming together and their values for children and how that can be transferred into child-centered spaces. So we've partnered with architects and engineers that are starting to help us to look at, when we value this for children, what does that mean when you look at their environment? So a case study booklet was also developed so that we can start looking at examples of design features that we might want to see. So it's all part of us building up a huge toolkit for communities who are interested in infrastructure to start the planning processes. Huge conference in November, 170 people were there, and it was 3 solid days of information collecting as well as networking and collaboration. Sam, Genosa, and Stella, our elders at the top, have been instrumental in the work that we're doing as an advisor and a guide in this work. And they're one of the favorite parts of every conference that we do, because they'll sit in a circle and they'll allow educators just the opportunity to ask them anything and share any teachings that are in their hearts. So just a few pictures from that conference. At our conference, and really at any opportunity that we have for community members to give their input, we try to do a graphic capture of that. So this is some of the graphic captures from the Our Children, Our Way conference, and it continually comes back to this in everything that we do. If you want to fix something, you go back to the beginning. We have to go back to our strong foundation. And under that, you can see the 7 grandfather teachings as the strong foundation. It continually, over and over, comes back to reconnecting, reclaiming. That we don't really need to learn something new. We just need to reconnect to what we already know. Raising children in their culture and language, how to keep the elder tradition going. And that is one of the things we hope that communities will consider. It's a part of their ELCC programs, is having elders as a central part. In some communities, especially in British Columbia, you see things like language nests. And perhaps that could be an option for NAN communities to have, you know, this home that is filled with elders and aunties and kokums, and children are just immersed. Strengthening community capacity was another focus. And that can look like so many different things, right? From sharing resources to supporting with funding, involving parents. And one of the things, I think actually I'll come on the next slide. Generative curriculum, and I've already touched on that, but that is definitely one of the key pieces that we see, because currently in Thunder Bay region, you have Confederation College, which requires students to be in Thunder Bay, or Oshki, who partners with, oh, it just escaped me, Candor, to offer their curriculum. And it's 2 weeks in your community and then 2 weeks in Thunder Bay. The success rate has been pretty low, because it is 99% women who have families and other roles within their community, and to leave for that 2 weeks to come to Thunder Bay just isn't a realistic thing that they can continually repeat. So it is definitely a part of this whole IELCC puzzle, in order to ensure that communities can have access to these programs, that there is other options where people can train at home in their communities. Supporting and engaging parental involvement in parenting skills, not just moms. And this is the part that I just really wanted to touch on, and from our keynote earlier today, when we talk about there are not enough men. And it's definitely, you know, when he said 15%, in the early years, it is so much lower. Like what, 2% maybe of men. And we'd love to see that change. But also we'd love to focus more on supporting the father's role in the family, in the rearing of children. So we have started to look at, and we've partnered with Men's Healing Group at NAN, and we're hoping to offer different opportunities for fathers to connect. We found some really great resources that we hope to share. So that is all kind of in the planning stages as well. And like I said, there's just like 100 different parts of the puzzle, right, that all kind of come together to support children and their families. Some of the work to date, we connected with the centers the first time because there was an accessibility fund. And I think it was Muskrat Dam that their Aboriginal Head Start, the wood that had the ramps going into the building was rotting so much that you couldn't even walk up it with getting a sliver They had children in wheelchairs they were trying to carry into the building. So it's when we connected with them, we were able to get some accessibility funding and fix all of those ramps. And we started to really build some connections. We started by holding information sessions, and that is something that is upcoming in April and May, where we'll have more information sessions so that communities can leave with a pathway of where they should go for funding and next steps. We've really connected with tribal councils, technical service units. They're a huge piece of this puzzle to support communities in getting the right infrastructure. Tons of gatherings and opportunities to connect. Chiefs of Ontario, we sit at a regional table. It has not been most helpful thing that we've had. There is a lot of misconception and not a lot of understanding of how different it is in the north, in Northern Ontario as opposed to Southern Ontario. And when you sit there and they start to listen, they're like, what? Like 36 communities without anything. And that's what happened too when we went to the National Expert Working Group. And so that is AFN's group. And we only have observer status because every province only gets one representative. And of course, Ontario's is Chiefs of Ontario, who are wonderful at advocating about so many things, but not when it comes to the issues of the remote communities. So they have allowed us the opportunity to speak up, and they are hearing our voices, and we hope that it supports some of the advocacy work that we're doing. Partnerships and collaborations, again, none of this will happen without a lot of different partnerships. So it started with NAN housing and infrastructure, because here in the early years, we have very little knowledge about sewage systems, all of these different kind of infrastructure concerns when you look at our communities. So partnering with, and we have a posting right now as well for an infrastructure advisor, because as we move forward with new infrastructure and supporting communities in all of these ways, it'll be essential that we can make sure the communities are supported in the right way from the beginning. And we Together Design Lab. So NAN Housing connected us with them, and they are run out of Toronto Metropolitan University. And they did all of those workshops with us in June in that case study guide that's looking at child-centered spaces. And we do hope that as we move forward in the process, that there's options to work with them to help and support communities to develop plans for structures that work for their values of children. We are in a research project with Nicole Anise Nash, and Dr. Nicole Anise Nash, and she is a professor at TMU, but she is also a member of Constance Lake First Nation, who has dedicated her time to supporting children and families in NAN communities. So we just finished, wrapped up phase 1 of the project, and it started to look at mainstream licensing and how it prevents barriers in communities. And it started to kind of look at community values and consultation. As I said, the next step is getting into every community to do a community town hall that allows every community the opportunity to voice their values for children, what they want to see for children in their community, what they would want out of early learning programs, what kinds of licensing things would work for them, every single part of it, as well as identifying those key priorities for a generative curriculum moving forward. So it's going to be a huge job to go to 49 communities, but we do believe it's what's necessary to ensure when we do develop a NAN childcare strategy and a NAN licensing framework, that it is done with meaningful and informed consultation with every single community. One of the big focuses that we also have right now is the early years and early learning and childcare promotion campaign. We need more of a buy-in from communities. We need more people within NAN communities to understand the importance of that 0 to 6, the role that the early years can play in the healing of a community, in the reclamation of language and culture, and what these centers can do. So we've started by traveling with our photographer, taking so many pictures because we really want NAN children and families to see themselves in these materials. We will be doing radio ads that will be translated into every language, NAN's languages. And we've started to do some videos. And so in the right, that's Elder from Ganugaming. And he talks a lot about how when he was in residential schools, they cut his hair. He was punished for speaking the language. There was never, you could never find any drum or Indigenous artifact or item anywhere within the center, and you would be punished for it. And then he said, but look around you. There's syllabic charts on the wall. The children, he had a ponytail, and he's like, the children can have long hair. In these centers now, we celebrate the child for being who they are. We do not take it away from them. We build it up. And it's just a powerful message that we hope that communities can hear moving forward. Unless we all understand the importance that it can play, then our work will be so much more difficult. So program support is really where Morgan came in. When she joined me 6 months ago, we finally had enough time to really try to strengthen that support to centers. So we started with professional network meetings that Morgan runs every single month with our childcare and Aboriginal Head Start coordinators. We have done lots of different things over the year of like just trying to meet everyone where they're at, and things like staff appreciation gifts, resource sharing. Morgan must send, I don't even know, a few a week at least, just to keep the resources coming to communities. If they have specific requests, then she will meet that. Started to build a Facebook page and resource library that we hope that all childcare educators across NAN communities can access and build their own community. It's definitely going to be essential moving forward that there's a strong community that is led by educators. One day we hope that we can have our own college of ECEs for Indigenous educators only. So like we have huge plans, and you start to see like the time is now. So staff recruitment campaign, it started with a poster. If you go on NAN's website, you'll see it. And just circulating it within communities. Every single one of NAN communities that has a center is hiring right now, and they do not have enough staff. So just whatever ways that we can. We've also connected with Oshki. We'll be presenting to students. Confederation College, we've started a partnership in any way that we can get the message out there. So if you ever have any other suggestions for us, please let us know. We developed a site visit program where communities who have centers invite us, and we tailor the programming to them. Ganugaming was ready for us. They were ready for us to bring in a partner and do cultural camps with children, training with educators, sharing circles, and all of these things. Some of the smaller centers, they aren't. They just want us to come in and sit on the floor for the day. And that's what we will do. So we'll just meet everyone where they're at. And it's part of that whole relationship building and being able to better help identify the needs. And one of the other things that Morgan is doing is planning a retreat for the childcare educators and Head Start educators from NAN communities in June. They keep on asking, we keep having all these training opportunities, and they need them, and that's great, but they are asking for more opportunities to hear from each other, to network and to hear what is happening in other communities, what's working, what the needs are. We started a technical working group. So this group is comprised of representatives from north, south, east, and west. It has Head Start and childcare coordinators. It has parents. It has experts from Toronto Metropolitan University and other people that we will bring in as we move forward. Just really supporting moving forward with a framework and strategy. These are, again, some Ganugaming pictures. I love this one where you have 3 generations of Aboriginal Head Start families. And we heard that a lot. We were interviewing like Priscilla here, who's a community champion and knowledge keeper. And her son was talking about when he was running around this center and what it meant to him to have that as part of his life, and how so many of his memories came from being at that Head Start Center, from being surrounded by people who were encouraging him to use his language and to be who he is. More pictures of Ganoogaming. We absolutely loved this experience. I think it was one of my favorite parts of this whole year. And I think we also really we worked with children for so many years. So any opportunity to be back there is just wonderful. And this link will be available soon, but in Ganoogaming, we had our photographer take pictures of every inch. So there is a 365-degree tour of Ganoogaming, so that you can go into any room that you want to, and you can see every nook and cranny, like if you wanted to see the heating and cooling room that I was talking about. And so this will be available if you ever wanted to take a look. And then I love this poster, so I had to put it up on this slide. But I absolutely love the imagery here. It is just so strong. And I just wanted to take a couple seconds to talk about what best practices can look like in the early years. And I love this, like our language, our culture, our children, our future. And I feel like that does really say everything right there. Another best practice is a framework that embraces and integrates language, culture, land, teachings, and practices in NAN territory, incorporates the priorities that are emerging from the childcare centers. A generative curriculum, I really can't say that enough. I feel like that is a huge piece, foundational piece. Reframe of speech and language pathology from an Indigenous lens. This is definitely another piece of it as we move forward with the framework. We have Dr. Charlotte Pelche, who's willing to work with us, who is an Indigenous speech and language pathologist and speaks a lot about how we need to really honor children's land literacy skills and the language, pre-language skills that every child brings, and to stop using westernized methods to assess that language and that speech. Community governance over the early years is definitely best practice. And a NAN licensing body that reflects and respects unique language, culture, traditions of NAN communities. I don't know if anyone has anything to add to this list. Of course, it can keep going on and on. But yeah. And I just hope, this is really easy to remember, ielcc@nan.ca. You could reach out to either of us. We have business cards if you would like them. If you are interested in moving forward with ELCC infrastructure in your community, let me know. We will support that. If there is anything that we could do to help you better support children and families in your communities, let us know. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions or any comments that they'd like to make? Well, thank you very much for listening. And I think there's only a few of you. So I brought one of these I should have given it to you at the beginning to give you something, but I have these little balls for you. So I'll just bring them around. And yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. Yeah.